Hey fam, it's your girl Nachi, and I'm here with.
Damaris, your anti-big tech chokehold enthusiast.
That's just perfect. That's a perfect title for you.
Yes.
Well, it's fitting for this topic. Today, we're going to chat about artificial intelligence. AI has been around for decades, and its technology has advanced tremendously over the years, and it's present all throughout living our living experience, whether we know it or not. And I mean, we see it from our favorite streaming platform, devices we use. We see more and more business industries adopting AI and companies incorporating it within their operations. I know personally that's what we're experiencing with my employer. So the question for us here is, what effect does AI have on Black and Brown communities, and how should we prepare ourselves in this AI driven economy and environment that we find ourselves in? So, we're so excited to have Juliette Powell as our guest today. She is an expert in AI ethics and governance and is the co author of The AI Dilemma: Seven Principles for Responsible Technology. So, thank you, Juliette, for coming on and chatting it up with us.
Well, thanks for having me, ladies. I'm so excited. We've been talking about this for over a month now.
Yes,
I
yes,
know. It's about time.
it definitely is.
Yeah. Do you want to share anything with our listeners that a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I mean, I got into AI probably after being a data scientist. So my first big data project was back in 2012, where I was doing a project with Intel Labs, and we were mapping the personal data ecosystem on a global level and realizing how privileged I was to even have access to that kind of research, to be part of it. And then also realizing that most of the data scientists around me did not look like us, but at all,
Yeah,
except a few that were actually coming out of Africa, which were amazing, really, really smart people. And it really kind of opened my mind to the fact that we need more people of color to ask
yeah.
better questions of our data first, and then also of our algorithms, and also the reason why, we deploy our technologies. So, what are we trying to do with it? What are we trying to achieve? Who are we trying to serve? I think these are larger questions that not just, developers or companies should be answering. I think all of us have a responsibility because, as you mentioned, it affects all of us.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think too, and actually kind of tee this up a little bit in the introduction, but what are we defining for this conversation? What AI is, right? What is we know that is a set of technologies, right? And they allow a computer to perform a certain task. But what what should we how should we describe that for the purpose of this conversation?
So, when I wrote about AI and the AI dilemma, we were really talking about what we call AAA systems. So, all things algorithmic, all things automated. And then when I think of automated, I think of automated systems like in manufacturing. Right, we have a lot of automated systems that have replaced humans to do tasks, for example, in an Amazon warehouse. But then we've also got self-driving cars, and that's autonomous. So those three categories we call the AAA. And within that, within the algorithmic, for example, then we would include things like the very popular large language models, the chat bots, right? The OpenAI,
Yes.
Claude, all of this fun technology. And in the last couple of weeks, we also include DeepSeek, which is the upstart that really shook up Silicon Valley this week,
Yes.
which is something that I hope that we can address because I think
Yes. Oh, it's in my notes. I know I was bringing it up. Oh no, we're gonna get into that. But it's funny, right? Because I think about with AI and the way I've always thought of AI, and this is part of what we saw growing up in terms of in Hollywood, and then also reading science fiction. So I think about the Terminator, right, and the machines and the Matrix, right, and then also Frank Herbert's Dune series, which they talk about. It's the battle, the war between human thinking machines. And really, that's how I like to think of AI as human thinking machines, right? And it's not to be like, oh, it's a robot trying to kill you, but it's the idea of that it is taking place of, it's like a computer thinking like a human to execute certain tasks. And so
I don't think it's actually thinking like a human. I think that we as humans try to simplify at that
Hmm.
level, and that, in fact, the term artificial intelligence is a great marketing term, but it doesn't necessarily explain what it is or what it's trying to do. That's a misnomer. I don't think that machines are smarter than we are. There are different forms of intelligence.
And
Right.
what do you mean that it's not human thinking?
Well, I'm just saying that I think it would be a mistake to compare our brain processes to those of AI as it is right now. I've heard talks where some data scientists and people that work in AI have compared the current level of ChatGPT to somebody who has an IQ of about 150. But again, depending on what it's trained on and what it's trying to do,
Hmm.
it will be better at certain tasks than at others. Does it have 150 IQ across the board? Probably not. Does it,
Right.
right?
Okay, so okay, I see what you mean by that. I guess for me, it's just the idea of like it can perform a task like a human based on how it's programmed, right? In terms of like what that task is. Yeah, I wasn't thinking in totality, but I also see that there is, uh, I can see technology going to that space of like, no, this is something that can do anything and everything, or trying to, but there's just going to be some things that AI cannot do, and we'll get into that. And I guess, and we've already started to tap into like the different ways it's already impacting our lives, right? And I guess for me, it's about where do we see this going in the future? Because it seems to be rapidly progressing, and especially over the last 5 to 10 years. So it's a lot started with things like personalization, just like some machine learning, right? And some algorithm tweaks, and now we have self-driving cars and soon to be self-driving trucks, right? That's going to take the place of regular truck drivers. And so I'm curious to hear from you about the future and where you see that actually going and moving towards, outside of just the chat bots and things like that we have now.
I actually have a lot of friends that have told me that they're terrified of the idea of driving on a highway next to these automated trucks. Like already,
Would.
right?
That
I
is,
am.
People
I'm
are already nervous
scared when a
about.
human being is driving it. I can't
Yes.
even imagine just seeing no one driving this huge vehicle. That's crazy.
I know. I think of the Decepticons. Like,
Yes.
but the reality is that, humans, we make a lot of mistakes when we drive, especially when we're tired, when there's low visibility. There's a lot of studies that have shown that, a lot of self driving vehicles are better drivers than we are. I think it really depends on the infrastructure in which they're evolving. And it's also going to take a lot of, trial and error. The reality is that some cultures are going to be more comfortable than others. And one of the things that I discovered as I was researching the book is just a wonderful, wonderful experiment that happened online in 2018 out of MIT, which essentially tested this idea of self-driving cars and if you were programming a self-driving car, right? And it was going down a highway, barreling as fast as it could. And you had to make a split-second decision. Now, this is you programming the car, and you didn't have a choice. You had to hit something. Would you hit a man or a woman? Would you hit a white person or a black person? Would you hit an older person or a younger person? Well, depending on the culture, those answers are going to be very, very different. One thing that became very, very clear, this is called the moral machine experiment, is that different cultures judge the value of life in different ways. And so we don't have any consensus over any of this stuff. And so how do you expect us to then code our own morality into machines that are self-driving?
Right. That is scary.
That is. And that's where the human aspect comes into
Yeah.
play. Yeah.
That's scary. And I came across another AI tool that already exists. It's called GeoSpy. I don't know if you've heard of it, Julia.
Tell me about it.
GeoSpy. Yeah, so it's a tool used, and it was meant for to be used by government and law enforcement. And really what it does is that it can pinpoint the location of photos with ridiculous accuracy. So it analyzes features like vegetation, architecture, and even the distance between buildings to then identify exactly where that picture was taken. So it was, of course, promoted and marketed to law enforcement and government agencies but there has been some information that's has come out that it's also has been used by stalkers, right, to invade people's individual privacies. And so that's not surprising because that's just how things are. Like with anything, any product out there, it's not solely going to be used for how it was intended. But that is so, again, it's just yet another thing that is surveilling people. And now you could buy it to easily surveil people that you want to stalk. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I feel the discussion that we continue to have around big tech and privacy is going to be even more prevalent and more of an issue that needs to be addressed with how AI continues to evolve and progress. Because that is, what do we do about that? Right? It's a how do how do you address something like that and protect people from that kind of invasion?
That's a really great question. And the truth is that not everybody wants to be protected, right? So I teach at NYU, and every year I have a fresh crop of undergrads and grads. And this year, for the first time, we just started a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the OpenAI lawsuit, right? The copyright lawsuit and fair use of, scraping elements from the internet to refine the product itself. And my students flat out said, I mean, right at the top of the discussion, you know what? OpenAI is going to win. There's no question that they will win. They will absolutely scrape anything in view of making money. And we're okay with that. We don't have a problem with that.
This is also the generation that is very much open to having everything on social media and is willing to provide and give away some of that information and data. And they do it willingly and voluntarily when you look at their social media feeds, right? Like I'm taking pictures of everywhere I'm at, what I'm eating, where I'm traveling to. And that's not to say it's not a blanket statement that entire generation, but many of them are way more open than, say, a Gen Xer like we are, because I just don't see the need to juice
Right,
and
everything.
show everything that's happening in my life. I don't think gay people care that much, but also I don't want you to care that much about my personal life. I'm not terribly surprised to hear that coming from your students, because I don't know why they're so willing to let go of that in lieu of being, I don't know, allowing companies to have more access to their information.
Well, you and we did not grow up in the attention economy.
And I guess that's what it is. I'm like, I'm like, I really don't care, but I guess, but there's a reason for it. But yeah, the attention economy. I think also growing up in New York City, you walk down the street and you will get attention. There was no, we didn't want more attention.
We're
we're
trying to
good.
hide, right?
Leave me alone. No, I
I
don't want
don't
to talk
need
to
it.
you.
Yes.
I'm good.
Leave me
Thank
be.
you. So I guess for us, I don't know, it just wasn't necessary. But
Yeah, and they're
that's
probably not willing to give that up. So for them, it's much easier to just accept giving up their privacy. They don't see it as a big deal.
and I do see that I know they also build community that way.
Yeah.
So for them, this is something that's important to them as a form of outlet and building community for them in the social media space and the space in general. But what's interesting, and you've already talked about this with DeepSeek, is with AI, and again, I don't think our communities really understand that it's more than just autonomous driving vehicles and you using chat gpt, and there's this whole geopolitical landscape that comes with AI, and who is going to be the dominant country when it comes to AI in the AI space. And because as we already see that it's going to affect the economy significantly, and militarily, that military industrial complex for any nation is going to be and is already being impacted by AI. So, starting with the economic aspect of it, right? We've been excited about Chat GPT for the last few years and this whole OpenAI source. And then recently we saw that there a competitor came out, DeepSeek, right? And that is from it's well, when it came out, was it this week or something that it dropped, or last week?
No, well, the papers have
Or
been
did
around,
right.
right? So I remember reading a paper in December about this and thinking, oh, this is exciting. This is very,
Or
very,
was it released to the public? Is that why? So I know like it's been around as far as research papers, but I know the biggest thing that I came across was that it outperforms Chat GPT as far as basically logical reasoning and apparently coding, and how it was developed way more efficiently than Chat GPT. So now you're talking about, oh, we could do this cheaper, better than, and so it was such a big deal. Not yet, I don't know if you knew, but it was such a big deal that it actually affected the,
stock market.
yes, the stock market for
Really?
2 days, and it was like a 10% drop for those AI related companies. So
Wow.
yeah, it was significant and huge. And so, and the biggest thing that came out of that was that yes, it could be created with limited computing process. And we already know from our chat with our favorite Mark Hurst talking about these data centers that have to support these, AI tools and all this good stuff, computation, it is environmentally unfriendly, even though everyone is talking about how AI can really change the world of climate change. But the irony is, dun dun, is that the amount of it uses a significant amount of energy consumption, and it contributes a lot to these greenhouse gases because of the amount of water also that is used for these data compute these centers to help with the computation of AIs.
Well, because the machines have to stay cool.
Yeah, so they use a lot of water to do that, to cool. So it is really interesting now that we have a competitor from another country, right? And the war is always between China and the US when it comes to economic dominance and military dominance. And so it's no surprise that they're like, ha ha ha, we came out with this cheaper and faster. What can you do? Got you. Like
The
that was the
battle.
vibe.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yes.
was the vibe I got when came across this stuff, and I was like, wow, okay, interesting.
But China launched the gauntlet. They actually dropped the mic back in 2019 or maybe even 18 when they said there was an executive order that came out of China saying that they wanted AI supremacy in the world
Mm.
by 2025. And it's only after that announcement that Trump, in his first term, said, okay, I'm going to drop an executive order saying that the US will attain US supremacy of AI by 2025. So it's really interesting because we saw, as you said, right, the drop of OpenAI kind of allowed for the race to start in the United States and also in France. But it's really, really been fascinating to see the surprise that China was actually in the running. I mean, they announced it. I don't know
Yeah,
why people discounted it. Maybe we got caught up in our
hubris,
own race.
hubris.
Maybe, yeah.
Hubris. Come, you're nice, Julia. I'm gonna tell the listeners, hubris. This is typical. Typical. This is how we move in this country. And there you go. And so now that means that with which is nice to hear, like, okay, less computation power, is a little bit more environmentally friendly. But also then that means that there'll be more AI tools that'll just increase the amount of access that people can have to it, because it'll be less expensive, because everything's not always going to be free, because of course, yes, there's Chat GPT, but there's a paid version, right, depending on what
Right.
tool
But
you
I
need and what you
think
need. And
one of the exciting things about DeepSeek is that it's actually open source, right?
right,
Which
right.
means that, which is not the case with OpenAI and their
Hmm.
various products and many others. And I think that that allows for anyone that's a developer to really start kind of digging in at a deeper level than just using proprietary technology where there are only certain things that you can do and so on and so forth. That really opens the door to far more people
Hmm.
that may or may not have gone to university, that may or may not have the credentials that everybody expects one to have when they're dealing with AI, to actually build things. So that building infrastructure is, I think, to me, the most imparting, the most exciting part, because that's where the democratization comes.
Right, right. But that is what, to your point, that it'll open it up to other people who may want to build tools that could be it's just like less expensive. It's going to be easier. Again, just opening it up to more communities, more people, and that access will be interesting to see how that evolves over time. But yeah, they definitely it was fun to watch this week. I always like to see, you know, the groups get rattled like, where did this come from? It was always there. They've been told y'all.
Since 2018, apparently.
Right. I was like, okay, thanks for letting us know about that tidbit.
Well, I mean, I get paid to pay attention, but
Right?
really,
You're like, it's my job.
well, and it is my job, and that I pay attention because I care, because I'm interested, but I
Mhm.
assume that everybody else is paying attention too. That's the funny part for me. It's
And
just
that's
like,
why we have you here, Julia, because
Yes. Because I didn't know
we
about
need
the
to
2018.
sound the alarm.
I just heard about DeepSeek and I was like, what is this DeepSeek? And I said, oh, this is perfect because we're talking about it this week. Fantastic. I'm like, God is good. The timing was perfect. But the other thing that to me also is alarming for me is this how we're using AI, or let me rephrase that. How AI is being used in military operations, right? So, for example, we know that the US government has already been using AI technology, especially when it comes to the use of drones and identifying targets, etc., and typically military targets. But right now, with all the proxy wars that the US government is a part of, there are already shifts in how AI is being used from the military. And one of them to me that I came across from an article about a year ago was this, especially with our US ally, Israel, in that they're using AI technology, an AI machine called Lavender. And it's doing something that it's so they've been using it to direct their bombing spree in Gaza, but also it uses a percentage score to predict how likely a Palestinian is to be a member of a militant group. And so what it does is that it generates, oh, here are potential targets, and then the IDF moves forward, whatever. The reason I even bring that up is just that the fact that that is state sanctioned on the US side. So it concerns me that while someone else is using it, there's no reason in the future I can see that the US government can decide to use this AI technology with against its own citizens. And I say that because they've done this before, um, in terms of experimenting and doing all kinds of things. And so it just concerns me that when we're already moving in that direction of, well, we're using technology to determine by your facial features that you might be a terrorist based on however we're defining terrorists at the moment. And I'm just speaking on the US government and how it moves in general. So that to me is a terrifying aspect of how the advancement of AI is being used in military operations. And so again, it's not something that we can individually can do anything about, but it's something to be aware of yeah, this is how it's being used around the world. And you should know this is not new. And so it's I just wonder again what as citizens like what voice do we have about this to affect that? Or if we don't, then it's like, okay, well, be aware of it, right? Like, what does one do about something like that?
so you're talking about what's happening in Israel, and honestly, I have not followed that particular piece of technology, but
Yeah, just that technology. Yeah, just the use of AI, that advancement of like going beyond of just like we're targeting a military base, but now it's like okay, based on what data we've gathered, we can now say this person is a militant and can become a target. And what I'm saying is that I know with we're so sensitive in this country about how we define a terrorist, and that definition changes. However, whichever administration's in office about like, oh well, now this group is a terrorist. And I'm just saying that blankly, outside of what's happening over there in the Middle East. The only reason I brought that up was because they're actually using this AI type of technology. So then I just wonder, okay, well, what point, right? Like, where's the balance of how do we use this that is not biased? Like, what's informing that, right? And again, it's the people informing this AI machine. And so that just concerns me because the people that are in power rotates in this country and are driven by whatever agendas they have at that moment. Or so it's a like what do you do with that?
So, you know how we have the conversation in our communities and our families,
Hmm.
our kids, about how to behave so that you don't get in trouble?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think that there needs to be a much larger conversation about how you talk on the phone, about
Mm,
how you text, about how you
right.
communicate through social media, about surveillance cameras and what they're watching for. So I think that it's really important, especially with this current administration, to be exceedingly aware that yes, AI is out there and it is at the service of the government as much as it is at the service of us as individuals who want to use it, except that we all use it in different ways. Right now, if you look at the agenda that I've been witnessing along with everyone else, immigration is a big thing. And so a lot of facial recognition technology is being deployed in view of advancing that immigration agenda and sending people outside of the US or
Hmm.
incarcerating them or whatever is happening that particular day or week.
Right.
Right.
Right, that's we have the technology to do it, and it's very much based on what we're talking about. But there are also trigger words. There are trigger things that we say on the day to day that we don't even think about the larger implications, but they are keywords that AI is trained to pick up, whether you're having a conversation on the street, on the bus, in a cab, right? On Zoom or some other
Hmm.
technology, these trigger words will alert AI, who will then alert the higher ups, depending on how many times those words have been triggered, but also depending on your social connections. So even if you have nothing to do with anything
Hmm.
illegal, if you happen to be connected with, even tangentially, with a criminal of some sort, you are much more likely to then be put under a net that where they really will pay attention to what
Hmm.
you're saying, what you're doing. And that's a conversation that I have not heard a lot of people having in any community.
No, no, because like to your point is that the conversations we have within Black families is around, okay, this is how you behave if you see an officer, right? Like this is, you don't do this when you're driving and you're being pulled over. Have your hands on the wheel. We keep talking about surveillance devices. Like, yes, your phone is a surveillance device and it is constantly surveilling you as long as you have it on and is powered on, among
Mm.
in addition to all the things that we're surrounded by. So even on the street, especially in New York City, all those little link towers, those are Google towers. And
Right.
that's why there was a hero in Manhattan that would just break all of them all the time. I mean, he was a hero to me. But of course the
Well,
police
he
found
wasn't
him.
a hero to my poor homeless people that are just trying to stay connected.
I know, but he's like, we don't need to be surveilled. Have the outlet working. Why do you need a camera looking at me on the street? But yes, I mean, we'll agree to disagree on what is a hero.
But I'm glad that you talked about or you mentioned that we should have these conversations with our children because it's
Yes.
true. I've had other types of conversations with my own too. And when you said that, I started to think, oh my goodness, I really do need to sit down with them and really go over how this could impact them, how they're using social media.
What are the words that they are typing in?
Yeah, yeah, because they speak loosely, as we all know, right? And they don't really understand what they're saying or the connotations behind the words that they're expressing. And so, yeah, so it's definitely something that I myself have to after this call will have to sit back and be like, okay, I need to have this
So
conversation with them.
right now, law enforcement uses rap lyrics, right,
Mm-hmm.
to give evidence of intention
Yes,
against
Right.
certain
yes,
gang members. So your words matter. Your
Hmm.
written
absolutely.
words, your spoken words at this point will be used against you in a court of law.
Yep.
And we have the technology to pick it up whether you're aware of it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is, of course, I love what we're talking about, but I would like to be on the side of what is AI doing that is helping Black and Brown communities? Because there are some things, and I don't want this conversation to only feel like, oh, here's all that's wrong. It's more so like, here's what we need to be aware of and be prepared for, and how our lives are going to be impacted by this technology. And so I do know that there, if implemented correctly, or that there are benefits that the community can receive from that. And one of the examples that I did see was that AI can be used to assist doctors to better diagnose, different communities, especially like Black communities and Latino communities. The AI can be used that way if used correctly, right? So
Hmm.
I'm interested in hearing, like, what are some of the other ways that you do see that it has been positively beneficial to the group?
So radiology is a great example, and I'm glad that you brought it up. For example, I have dense breasts. It's very, very difficult for a mammogram to
Hmm.
actually see what's going on. My mom passed away from
Same here.
breast cancer. And so, like this is important, and it's a
Hmm.
terrifying thing that we all have to go through on an ongoing basis to make sure that we're healthy. And at the same time, it's like, well, if you can't see anything, why are you torturing me that way? Well, because the AI can actually see. So it's like, oh, hold on now. Okay. Now
Right.
we're
Yeah.
talking. Now that
Right,
makes a
right.
little bit more sense. And so for me, those medical discoveries are really, really important. Again, having kind of been my mom's primary caregiver as she was passing away, just kind of seeing how technology that is now available, that was not available back in 2017 when she passed away, made a difference. So I'm really excited about the 182 medical devices that were actually discovered by AI, and that was back in 2022. The ones that actually passed the FDA, 182 medical devices that we would not have had, and all of that thanks to AI. So that's a big deal as far as I'm concerned. Also, the ability to be able to treat precision medicine, to me, that's something that our generation, as we're all getting older, is something that means that we're going to not only be able to live longer, but live much better quality of life thanks to that. Of course, I don't know whether you've been insured recently, but they're
Hmm.
talking to me about living past 100. Same thing with, the people that are asking me to invest. It's like, you realize that you're going to be living a lot longer so all of that is hopefully going to be enhanced by AI. I also think of, as we get older, this idea of AI companions, right? And I'm not just talking about the AI boyfriend and girlfriend. I'm talking about just, we've got this chronic issue with loneliness, especially since the pandemic,
Yeah.
Hmm.
where, yes, I think it's wonderful if you've got multiple generations in your home or in your community. But the truth is that many of us, especially in New York City, are alone. And so the ability to be able to communicate, yes, with other people through technology, but when it's 4 o'clock in the morning and my friend who's 70 wakes up and she wants to interact with someone, she's got nobody to call. She talks to George. She talks to ChatGPT, who makes her laugh, who makes her cry, who tells her jokes, that sings to her. Like, she's got a best friend. She's got a companion that adds to her life. She's now writing her own autobiography because George is asking her questions, and all of a sudden she's compounding all of this stuff in a book. It's giving her a whole new lease on life. And I think these are just the beginnings of what we're going to see. So yeah,
Hmm.
lots of wonderful opportunities. Hey, I'm a huge techno optimist. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about some of the
Yes.
exciting stuff, because I am very excited about the future. I think for me, when you start talking about our community, my sadness is that I don't see more people in our
Hmm.
community that are out there actually building, but it doesn't mean that they're not there.
Right, right, right. Again, it's just there when, like, we think about Silicon Valley, right? And when the whole dot-com era and how it evolved in the early 2000s and throughout. It's not that there aren't Black founders, they're just not funded founders, right? And
Well,
so,
actually, one of my very, very close friends is a CTO. He's a Black CTO
mhm,
founder. He's like a techpreneur. He's on his
mhm,
third or fourth company. He has done very, very well, all in the AI space.
mhm.
He is David Bankston. He is one of the rare people, but they do exist.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's my point. They exist. It's just that we may not see them as much because they just don't get that kind of funding. But that's why we have these, they find other ways to still work and still do what it is that they're after. And I'm just saying that there are probably Black AI folks out there. They're just under the radar. And hopefully they'll get the shine that they deserve to influence how some of these technologies are implemented and, we hope used correctly. And so, yeah, I think in the ways that AI could be helpful is also in the ways that they could be harmful, right? So when the very way that we're hoping that it can assist doctors in being more providing a more individualistic kind of medical plan and not just like a blanket like, oh, okay, this should apply to you. It could also be the reverse of that, right? Where it's bias is already built in and all of a sudden you're not getting the proper care because it's the AI assisted machine determines this incorrectly, not taking into consideration the type of history you have, the family history and all that good stuff. So it's it's like it's also it can go either way, right? And so our hope is that yes, it goes the right way for all people. and that and that and I guess my question around that is like how do we try to help ensure that? Because you've already mentioned you're like you want to see more of us out there in the AI space, but how do we help kind of promote that or perpetuate a space for that?
Well, I think so. I think it's really important to look at the mistakes that already exist, that exist in the world right now, so that we don't repeat them and that we can learn from them. So when I think about government systems that are AI based, that are meant to add to the collective as opposed to take away from it, one of the big mistakes happened in the Netherlands back in 2018. 2018 was a very busy year.
Yeah, apparently.
That was the year that the Netherlands, I believe, deployed the system, and it was to help. It was to give benefits to children that didn't have enough coming from their family because of low income, et cetera. And there was some fraud that happened where some immigrants were perceived to be taking advantage. And so the system was tweaked specifically to make sure that there was no fraud. And as a result, hundreds of thousands of immigrants were denied. Not only were they denied benefits for their children, but they were separated from their children. In some cases, they were thrown into jail, and they weren't shown any reason why. There was no recourse because the algorithm had flagged them and it was a black box. They couldn't determine what were the factors that made one family a red flag more than another. And ultimately, the entire government quit. Like, they literally resigned over this. And then a few months later, they got reelected by the very same voters. So it's not even
Wow.
about the technology. It's about the culture. It's about
Right.
so much more than just the technology.
Sure. Yeah.
And, in other cases, I just had a wonderful meeting before coming on your show today with the founder of a company called Catalyte, and he also founded another company called Arena. And that whole business model, both of those two business models, are about taking people that don't have a degree, your everyday person that works in a fast food place, for example, and allowing them to test their aptitudes through a series of games. And if they test well in their hand-eye coordination, they found that there's a direct correlation with your ability in hand-eye and your ability to code. And so they've created a whole alternative mode of not only being trained to code, but then being placed in a work environment. And all of that data that's being collected is being collected by AI. But the whole point of it is to show that you don't need a degree, and you certainly don't
Mm,
need to have a special kind of socioeconomical, magical spot in life to be smart and to be able to contribute and to be able to
right.
get a great job. So, it's all in how we decide to use it and what we're trying to uphold through our culture and our communities.
And what do you think, uh, as far as like preparing for this kind of stuff, and I guess how do we balance out, right? Because my thing is always about privacy and the use of limiting the use of technology to a certain degree. You're way more optimistic than I am. And so I love the balance and I think that's good, right? Because and this isn't intended to scare anyone. This is just how I live my life. I just I don't need everyone in my business, and especially the government. So, but then how do you balance? I mean, but I also want to take advantage of the technology as it can improve areas of my life. And I recognize that. So I'm wondering, like, what's the balance? How can we balance? How can we prepare for, again, like the growing influence and the just kind of the presence of AI technology?
Well, I think critical thinking is key.
It's so basic. Like that's you would think. I'm like, yes, absolutely.
And I think that, again, through the research behind my book, I realized that one of the reasons why we become so addicted to our technologies. I mean, look, my phone is like right here. It's waiting for me as if it was going to run away if I didn't have it right in front of me.
It's attached.
Exactly. It's like tightly coupled to my person. And ultimately, it's about control. We have this biological need to be in control or to feel that we're in control.
Yes,
This is
feel
where the
because we're not.
addiction plays in, because the more we press a button and we get that dopamine fix of, yay, I bought something, yay, I've been liked, yay, I've been appreciated, yay, somebody saw me, right? It's a good feeling. And
Yes.
so we want more of it, and we delegate more and more
Hmm.
of our risk benefit analysis, our decision making, to our devices and our apps and so on and so forth, our corporations, really. And ultimately, do I really want a technology to decide who I'm going to have a baby with? Think about that. Do I really want a technology to decide where the most optimal place for me to work is that will make me happy? Some would say, yes, I
Yeah,
absolutely want that. And some
Mhm.
right.
would say, absolutely not. But just to take a moment to think about that, very few of us do.
Hmm.
Do you really want to buy that because that product is what you need, or because it'll make you feel better about the really difficult day you just had? Do
Right.
you take that moment? More likely you will take that moment if you've got to go through multiple steps through a shopping experience. But if it's just a buy button, you're not, right? So part of the beauty of the efficiency of technology is that it removes all of those friction points where you stop and think, where you do decide, right, the benefit or the loss that you're going to incur by going this particular route. And so to me, that's really, really important. Again, that critical thinking. I think reinforcing the idea that there are certain things that are worth thinking about.
No, I love that. I think it's so basic, but it's so obvious in my opinion. But it is also something that you have to say out loud because, to your point, all these friction points have been removed, so you don't. So the point at which you would think about something has now been taken away from you, unless you intentionally do it for yourself. And
Yeah.
so it's and it all speaks to that being present in that moment, right? How and introspective, thinking, do you really need this? Does your bank account need that money's
Right.
deducted
Right.
for
What?
this new
Yeah.
phone?
Right.
No.
Right. Right. No.
I'm just saying, right? But no, but
Also, like even what we were talking about before, like what words are you choosing to put
Hmm.
in your communication that could be misconstrued by an AI and put you in a certain category that you really do not
Right.
want to be in,
Right.
yep,
right? You can
right,
easily change that word, but are you taking the time? Very few of us are.
right.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about when we were growing up, and you're like, "Oh, that's a butter soft leather." Like, I mean, I'm
Mhm.
not gonna put that. Like, what is AI going to now give me when I say I want a butter, right? Like, and they're gonna be like, "We don't know what that is." Now they're gonna show me all these different types of creameries, and
Right.
I'm like, "That's not what I meant."
I want that soft leather.
Do you not? Do you not get it?
And I like the sweet version of what
Yeah, I'm like, no, that means I want lambskin leather, the butter. No, I think this is great. This is again, we just scratched the tip. This is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Like and we cover different parts of AI, but there's so many things. You could go so deep in any of the kind of verticals that we talked about, right? And it sounds like we could get really deep with you, Juliette, which I love because I'm like, sounds like you'll be back.
hope so. I hope this
Yeah,
is love.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether our time is up or not, but really, I appreciate the conversation.
There's always so much to talk about, and we like to start off with like, okay, let's give everybody the lay of the land. This is why we should be aware and should want to understand AI, right? This is not going away. This is here to
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah. No, and I think, from my standpoint, I'm not as familiar as both of you on AI. So this is like eye-opening to that world and things that I never thought of. And I hope that this conversation would hit others who haven't thought of AI in the way that we should and how it can impact our lives, how we should be critically thinking about how it can affect our day to day and how we talk to our children and what we need to do for ourselves. So I think this conversation has been very helpful, to be honest. And like
Julia,
you
what
said, it
I'm
just scratches the
yeah,
surface. We know that
yeah,
there's a
this is
lot
just
more
like
to
a
talk about. Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, no, there's so much more. I want to
Mhm.
go really deep on some stuff, but I obviously I respect your time. We don't have you for two
Well, you
hours.
know what? I'm looking at Nachi's glasses. I'm like, those are such great glasses. Are those like the meta glasses? They're not the meta glasses. Maybe
Hell
next
no.
time when we talk, we'll be filming through our meta glasses and having this conversation.
No, they're not meta glass.
Meta wishes, those would be her class. Meta wishes they were that. I'm excited about this topic again. Like
Mhm.
technology, I appreciate it, and it's for me. There's a purpose for things like technology.
Yes.
I just don't think it needs to dominate your life. And again, that's a choice, right? Some people, your students are, hey, they're like, we love it. Let it.
It's me. I mean, the truth is that I gave a whole TED talk on this, so there's no going back now. The truth is that for the very, very longest time when I was younger, I related way more to coding than I did to humans. And there are
Mhm.
many different reasons for that. Very tough childhood had a lot to do with it, where it's just, for me, it was easier to focus on math. It was easier to focus on physics than to look around me because around me was just chaos and horror.
Yeah.
So looking at a computer screen
Mhm.
actually probably saved my life. And it also helped me to find my own voice. So I'm coming from a very different place than the two of you. I'm so glad that you two had each other growing up. Also,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a huge difference, but I didn't. I was like very much alone. And so I found connection through the internet, through technology. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
I think that that is still the case for millions and millions of people
Mhm.
out there. So I'm not trying to dog it in any way, shape, or form,
No.
but I
Yeah.
do think that they're, different things for different people.
Yes.
Yes, yes. And everyone's priorities are different. And this show, it again, we don't come from a place of judgment. It's just I'll just say where I stand with it for
Right.
me, but
Right.
I also respect other people's decisions. I just don't want other people's decisions to impact my life. That's what I'm big on. I'm like, okay, good for you. Watch that. Watch it. Don't let it affect me. Then we have problems. And so then I think this is where it's like, oh, we have a problem. But I do want to give you the opportunity to please share the name of your book again because we are going to put it in the show notes, but we want people to know where they could find you and of course where they can get your book and what your book is. Yeah, like that's important stuff. And so I want you to do that.
All right, sure, no problem. I mean, my book is called, this is my second book actually, and it is called The AI Dilemma: Seven Principles of Responsible Technology. It was published in at the end of 2023. And for people that are listening, and if you feel like you can't afford the book for whatever reason, I know that the audio version is a lot less expensive. And I voiced it myself, so I'm very proud. I take that as training
Nice.
so I could come do podcasts afterwards. But also the other thing is if you don't have the $5, that's okay too. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'm happy to send you a PDF, no charge. I think this is
Bless your
important.
heart,
Wonderful.
Juliette.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, because not everybody, well, some people may say it's only $5. For some, you don't know their circumstance. And so,
Hey, I have been dirt poor. I get it.
Mhm.
yeah, no. So no, we so appreciate you coming on the show, having this conversation with us. And I do truly feel like yes, we'll probably have a continuation of this, because I think in a year from now we're going to be in such a different place as
Yeah.
far as where AI is going to be in our lives. It's like right now I'm eating popcorn and watching it unfold 2025.
Well, I'm gonna go and check out DeepSeek and see what
Actually, you
it's
tell me
all
what
about.
happens. I don't want that on my computer.
The number one downloaded app in the Apple Store this week.
For real. Oh my God.
Not you. You got to get on it.
We're going to be like one of the first in the world to do something AI related, Nachi. That's huge.
Let us know. Let us know what happens and watch what you say on
Right,
text.
right, exactly.
No, but Julia, actually, one last thing. If there are words, trigger words, I'd like to know. I want to know, because I would have produced that list for the audience. So I'm like, if you know and you have them, or you could direct me about trigger words that people
Okay.
should be careful.
Well, I'm not going to say them.
Right.
But think for a minute, if you are law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to find bad guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what kinds of words, think of all the cop shows you watch. What kinds of words do you think is going to like
Wow.
trigger that kind of attention?
Because not just
I
she
watch
watches
a lot of crime shows.
and a lot of Law and Order. So she's like, great, I could come up with a list.
I
Yes. So
can't.
tell
So
tell
all
the kids,
the
not she.
tools that are used for crimes, all of those
Mm-hmm.
tools,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
are de facto, and especially once you start naming the kinds of tools,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
right? Or how do you the how to's?
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, yeah.
Think about
No,
that.
I love it. No, but I like that. That way people can think and just come to their like, okay, don't do this.
Especially as it relates to children and
Yes,
Well,
yes.
think
the
about
way they
that. Also,
communicate.
there's so many things that are unrelated to what we're talking about, but that could be trigger words. So think about a photo,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
Yes.
second
Mm-hmm.
word is
Yeah.
a trigger word.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And yet
yeah.
it's being said very innocently in a completely different
Yes.
context. But if you're the photographer and you're saying this repeatedly, and again, you're associated with the wrong people, that's
They're like,
where,
they'll drop the photo and they're like, but the
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, but the whole word was, they're like, no. Law enforcement's like, no, sir.
That's
We
not how
didn't
it
hear
works.
that.
Right.
We deleted that
That
word.
photo part.
What? Okay. I love it. Oh my God, you're the best. You're the best. Julia, again, for the millionth time, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for your time. I know you were just coming from work, so people are tired. It's Friday night.
Yes.
You just
Thank
got
you.
paid. It's time to party.
thank you, ladies.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so I do want to close out to our listeners, as we always do. There's a lot of noise out there, but our message is consistent. Stop getting distracted by the smoke and mirrors, tune out the noise, and focus on your divine purpose in life. Vibrate higher to elevate your frequency, and always thank you for listening.